I already solved the plot of Knights of Guinevere based on just a single trailer and a literal website. This is a show about the corruption of capitalism, a world taken over and run by a singular company, one that has turned the planet into a tourist attraction, not just for those who live in it, but for those who come from the stars. And it all ends with a singular princess who comes from the stars themselves and sends the tourist planet into the depths of hell. Don't believe me? Let me explain. Knights of Guinevere is an upcoming indie animated show from Glitch Studios, being their first 2D show and being created by Dana Terrace, who you may know as the creator of Disney's Owl House. Dana Terrace is a creator I very much enjoy the works of, with the Owl House being one of my favorite shows, period. Eventually, I'll probably get around to making a theory on it. The show is set to release on September 19th and currently has very limited information on the plot or even the characters. We got a trailer released yesterday which shows us a lot about the world and some things, but it doesn't really feel like it gives us very much plot-wise. We also got some concept art of characters, which is cool and kinda helps, but not really. And we got a weird in-universe website for the Parked Planet, which actually does give us something. But after watching said trailer frame by frame, looking at all information released on social media, and breaking down this website and even finding the code to a secret part of it, I actually think I've solved the plot and secret lore of the show already. And it all comes down to one thing. What is Princess Guinevere? On first watch of this trailer, the most obvious answer on what Princess Guinevere, or what Dana Terrace, an artist, called Gwen, is that she's some sort of robot. But the problem here is that she bleeds. Now, she bleeds blue blood, which is not very human, but it also isn't very robotic. Also, it said in the trailer she was kept alive by blood and fear. Now, the fear part, I got no clue what that means, but the fact that she A, is alive, and B, needs blood makes me think she is not a robot, or at least not fully, maybe some sort of android. Instead of her being some robotic mascot for this parked planet, maybe she was a real mascot, a person, a movie star even it seems, but then something happened that made it so they had to make her an android, but also keep her alive in a weird sleeping beauty coma state. There's a lot of missing details to Gwen's story really, but I think we can find some of those details in this trailer if you pay a little attention. First off, we see two characters who are with Gwen a lot in what seems to be flashbacks to her being a princess and normal and not a robot, and a few shots that hint at what happened to her in the first place. The first character is who I would call Walt Disney Guy. This is basically Walt Disney. He seems to be the villain who is most likely the Walt Disney of the theme park where Princess Guinevere is the Mickey Mouse, even having the ears. But there's actually more to him under the surface. See, when you first watch the trailer, you'll meet him and a little princess who to be a sister to Gwen, and seems to be very robotic and always following him around. This is probably to make you believe she is also a robot. But if you pay attention, I think it's actually more likely that the Walt Disney guy is a robot and she is human. First off, he acts pretty robotic, standing still when he's not doing anything, like really still. He also seemingly is following the little princess around more than her following him around, with her doing things and him just following in the background. He also has this weird circle on his forehead, which seems like it could be plugged into something, while she doesn't have any physical robotic characteristics, only personality ones, with being cold and very blank, but that could just be her personality. I kind of theorize the show is gonna have her being the big bad, instead of having her being a lackey of the Walt Disney guy and a redemption arc as he's the big bad. Editing me here to update some information, we got a little image that tells us all the names of our characters and the voice actors voicing them, along with some new art for each. There are two things here to note. A, being we know the first and last name of the little princess, Olivia Park, which is also the last name of the Walt Disney guy, Orville Park. But more importantly, we learn the little princess isn't very little. See, we did a voice cast for a character called Olivia Park Old with an artwork of her as a very frail old woman. This basically confirms that all the parts in the trailer we see her are set in the past like I theorized, and the fact that she did not age what the Walt Disney guy did confirms she is human and he is most likely a robot. But hey, confirming a theory in a theory is always fun. We also see them together a few times, what seems to be the little girl either torturing Gwen or maybe dragging her to her tower and locking her away, maybe even saying goodbye to her before they put her away in a weird coma. Speaking of a tower, where exactly is Gwen? Well, it was said in the trailer she was locked away in a tall tower in a deep sleep and kept alive by blood and fear. This is basically all we know about where she is. We can assume this tower is located on the floating islands, which I'll explain in a moment, but other than that, location-wise, there's not much to talk about. She's very much in a coma-like state, being kept alive for some reason we don't know yet, and dreaming away about being a real princess in a fairy tale world. Now, the big thing we do actually have a lot on is the world Guinevere lives in, Parked Planet. This is a planet that seems to be owned entirely by a single company like Disney, even with its own Walt Disney. The park planet is a weird in how in the past it was just a planet, but in the modern day it is two things. The abandoned park of the past and the modern day Sky Islands, where the majority what we can assume the wealthy and important people live, even with new parks. We know all these things both because the trailer and the interactive kind of in-universe website. On the website we have artwork what the planet looks like with a few Sky Islands in the clouds where it seems way nicer than what's below, which we see a lot of in the trailer. In the trailer we get shots of a dystopian looking Earth where people live in the old abandoned park, which is the planet. It looks run down and like something horrible happened, and people seem to blame Guinevere. Statues of her defaced with devil horns, stars, and even an alien sticker. Lots of connections between her and devils and even space are being made here, and that is pretty interesting. Also, a character flips off her statue, hinting they very much blame her for whatever horrible thing happened. We also see a lot of factories on the surface. I assume the Skylands are using surface people for labor, and that's why there are still soldiers and outposts and even boats transporting stuff. We also see giant floating magical test tubes mostly being carried from Sky Island to Sky Island. From all this, we can understand a few things. So the planet is divided into rich and poor, literally by Sky Islands, and the company that seems to run the world has a lot to do with it. It also seems something happened in the past related to Guinevere that caused the world to have to mainly relocate to the skies, and those left on the surface seem to hate her and the company. Now, I actually think I have an idea on how we can learn more about Guinevere and maybe what she did. Let me explain. See, there's also more important stuff on the website other than just information about the actual park planet being about Gwen. Based on the website, we can learn that there are 4 versions of Gwen, the 4 different princess versions she played when she was an actual mascot, being princess, racer, mermaid, and ballerina Guinevere. We learn a little about these possible split personalities or just elements of Gwen on the interactive website through a quiz. Basically, you can take a quiz to figure out which Guinevere you are, and we learn a little about each. First, it seems they all have powers, which probably means Gwen will have some unique abilities, possibly being mind control, telepathy, creating illusions, and talking to sea animals. These correlate to each different version, which when you get one, you are told a little about that version, and more importantly, the responsibilities of them. Princess Guinevere is responsible for keeping up the park as a central mascot and bringing a parade of festivities and friendship. It is their job to make everyone around them feel secure and able to confide in them, both their hopes, their desires, and their secrets, and how those secrets can be fashioned as steel if needed to sustain the kingdom. This seems like it would connect best to her possible telepathy or mind reading, being able to know all the secrets. It's also giving major cult vibes here with Guinevere. I assume the company used her as a mascot, but also because they run the world, possibly a religious figure, an almighty being, maybe even with powers. Then when she fell, becoming something not so great, she became a devil in the eyes of the people. Now there's also the mermaid Guinevere, who was made to keep people happy, smiling, and laughing, and also maybe a murderer. So it says in our section she loves to make people's eyes widen as they turn the color of her hair, which is red, or depending on how you see it, blue, but her blood is also blue, so even that is still murderous. So this is probably the talking to sea animals thing, but also maybe hints at Gwen having a murderous evil side, which could explain what happened that made everyone hate her. I assume Gwen has some sort of split identity, which each form created by the park themselves, they're basically torture. This is also not helped by her weird coma state that even when awake from said coma, it still seems she's cutting back and forth from the real world and the fairy tale world. We then have ballerina Guinevere, who is to be elegant and mysterious, wearing a mask no one can crack. It is also important to note that she has stars in her costume, which we will get into later because oh boy, is that a big element I've left out. This character is also matched her illusions, especially with the last line on her description being her scratching at walls trying to figure out if they're real. We then have racer Guinevere, who is to simplify just very competitive and trying to push the limits and win everything, with the last line on her description saying that without rivals to overtake, what's the point of driving at all? This is also a very concerning version of her with an almost very unhealthy mental state possibly present. Power-wise, I got no clue how she connects to mind control, but that's what's left, so who knows? Now, there are some other things on the website that are interesting, like the rules. Rule 1 is pretty simple, it's just no running, but Rule 2 is very interesting. It's in case of emergency, Gwen must be obeyed. This rule just really harkens on the weird cult worship this company-run planet forces on its people, basically worshipping Guinevere, so if she was the one to cause said emergency, things probably wouldn't go well. Rule number 3 is that you shouldn't hug Guinevere too long because she can damage your genomes. This is very weird. I believe it has something to do with how she connects to space, but again, I'll get into that later. Rule number 4 is to stay away from the surface for your own safety. This is probably because these new rules are for the new park and the floating islands, and those people have been brainwashed to obey the company who runs everything, not knowing the horrible thing that they did in the past, something we can't assume with it being stated in the trailer how this all happened a long time ago. I also think with all the factories on the surface, it may actually not be very safe to live in, but to be honest, I don't think that's the priority of this evil planet empire. Now, the entire video I have mentioned but not explained one thing: how this show connects to space. Basically, there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of references and imagery that connects to stars and even planets. First off, the company logo for the park planet is a planet with a ring, also being the logo for the show, so it's pretty important. Now, I already mentioned that Guinevere herself is connected to a lot of the space references with star graffiti and even an alien sticker on one of her defaced statues. This means whatever connection she has is public, maybe again connecting to whatever big thing Gwen did. And after looking at the website, we got more hints at Gwen herself having a dark side. Now, the big thing that does a lot here is on the website as well, a few lines about the parks. The website gives literal instructions on how to visit the planet, telling which galaxy and solar system you need to cross to find it. Along with that, in the trailer, the Walt Disney guy almost does a weird ad for the park, telling you to visit it in front of a starry background. All this together makes me think the park planet is a literal planet-side tourist attraction, not just for the people who live there, but for aliens who visit. And maybe Guinevere is one of them. Based on how much connection Gwen has to stars, even with her costume being covered in them, to literally being called an alien or having blue blood or her skin being gray for some reason, there is definitely something here. But the big thing that made me think she was an alien is, well, this image. In this image, we see Guinevere when she was a princess on a movie red carpet for the film Space Princess Guinevere and the Shooting Star. This is literally telling us everything we need to know. Guinevere is some sort of alien life form. This is why her blood is blue and her skin is gray. She is being used as a mascot for this park planet until she did something that ruined everything, basically destroying the planet as we know it. This made everyone abandon it into these floating sky islands where they rebuilt both civilization and even what seems to be some of the park. This made everyone on the ground Earth living in the abandoned park planet hate her, while she herself was locked away in a tower in some coma-like sleeping beauty state. Now all we're left with is a single question. What did Guinevere do? I think the big thing that happened, the horrible thing Gwen did, was try to take over. I think she tried to take over the position of the Walt Disney guy, overthrowing his kingdom. I think this mainly because of her name, Guinevere. This is the name of King Arthur's wife who tried to overthrow him, taking his place. What if Gwen, with her multiple personalities, including some nefarious ones, tried to take over using the Gwen robots to keep the park together and did a hostile takeover of this already evil company / government? This would make the world hate her, would probably mean that the original Gwen that did this had broken if she'd gotten this point, making her the broken android. I think she's an android because something happened to her during this that made the Walt Disney guy and the little princess have to turn her into one, also keeping her on some weird life support. And while after thinking about it and all the weird imagery with lab experiments and her being possibly an alien even with powers, I think I saw why they're keeping her around. They're using her as some sort of battery for the Sky Islands as they use her life force and power to keep it afloat and also do all their evil magical experiments. Now, they also could technically be keeping her alive because they like her. That would be a twist for sure. Who knows? Then, of course, after many years or more decades, I think our actual show begins with the main plot being Frankie and Andy, who I actually haven't mentioned much, being our other main two characters along with Gwen, two girls on the surface living in the rundown old park, trying to get a chance at a better life in the rich islands. And for some reason, that includes kidnapping the old broken android and possibly fixing her up. Then the plot kicks off as they slowly discover the deep secrets being kept away by the Guinevere family and kingdom, and well, even Gwen. And that is the deep lore and plot of the Knights of Guinevere. Maybe. I have no idea. That's the theory.